Thank you very much. Mr. Posey from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to thank everyone on the panel for some spectacular testimony. Some of it was a little bit conflicting, but I think it was all sincere from your perspective and very enlightening to us. I wish we weren't here to even have to talk about overdraft, and that there wasn't a need for such a thing, and that there could be no abuse by the borrower or the lender. But we know in reality, in commerce, that's going to be necessary occasionally. And we know that ultimately, at the end of the day, there is, or at least one would think there should be, some consequences for not paying obligations that you promised to pay. Hate to use that term, it scares a lot of people. It's called personal responsibility. And sometimes I wonder if more government and more regulation and less personal freedom also means less personal responsibility. If at the end of the day we don't really hurt people more than we help them. And what I want to make sure is the unintended consequences of what we're looking at don't go too far overboard. I know the $1 Coke really hit my nerve. It seemed pretty outrageous. Reminded me of the last time I was 1 minute late for getting my dime in a parking meter, and it was a lot more than 35 bucks. And they do that to poor people and rich people. It really doesn't matter. The parking meter doesn't do an analysis on how much it costs City Hall to collect that thing, whether we think it's fair or not fair. That's the cost of parking there. And if you don't want to pay a huge fine, make sure you get your nickel or your quarter in there on time. Again, it's personal responsibility. I wonder from any of the consumer organizations, and just respond if you know this for a fact, has there been a survey that's just been straight up, would you prefer overdraft protection at 35 bucks a crack, or would you prefer non-sufficient funds at 35 bucks a crack and possible legal liability? Has anyone asked their respondees that question and framed it just like that in any of this polling? I'd like to hear from you if you have. Just if you haven't asked the exact question.
That exact question worded that way? Yeah. We have not asked the question worded in that fashion.
Because I think, that's the bottom line for most of my people back home. I know I would not want to pay a $35 fee for an overdraft, but I would much less want to pay a $35 non-sufficient funds fee and have my check bounced.
Congressman, we did ask, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, debit card transactions are really driving the overdraft volume. So we did ask the analogous question for debit cards, which is, would you rather have it declined or have the transaction processed and pay the fee? And for debit cards, the numbers were, 80% of consumers would rather have it declined. 75% of consumers who had overdrafted in the last 6 months would prefer to have it declined in the debit card context.
Okay. The next question, a lot of times I think it's perceived that we're looking at huge banks exploiting people in the marketplace day in and day out up here, but we've got representation here from a lot of community banks and credit unions, and I'd be interested in knowing from them what the unintended consequences might be of this. If we regulate this to a $10 charge, and if people opt in and say, look, for $10 a transaction, we'll pay all the bad checks that you ever want us to pay. What that could mean at the end of the day. I know Congress used to have a program, something like that, and they had to completely eliminate their overdraft protection because it was so badly abused. Anybody in the marketplace want to weigh in on that?
We are, we are concerned, Congressman, that there would be abuse, and that the abuse would be even higher than some of it is today, that the number of overdrafts would increase. And we really don't want that to happen.
We haven't heard today about the loss ratio either when they do an overdraft protection or an overdraft notice. How often is that money ultimately recovered? Does anybody know that? Or are there some losses that are sustained that aren't repaid that go into that $35 fee?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, there are. I don't have the numbers for you. We could probably get that, but some of those are fairly substantial depending on the institution.
Congressman, most of the credit unions that I work with reserve approximately 6 to 7 to perhaps as much as 8% of the total amount for potential losses.
Yeah, I think, as the lady pointed out before, the processing fee probably should be quantified generally, and I think these things need to be quantified too to give us a full picture of what all is involved in this. It's not just, you know, we're going to take $35 and it's all 100% pure bottom line profit. I think that is the feeling you get when you hear the one side of the equation until you hear the other side of the equation. It doesn't seem to focus, you know, as much in the middle. And I would like in the future when we have these discussions, if we could just get more information like that.
The gentleman's
sir.
time has expired, but